But it's time for the drinks trolley. I think it's definitely time we saw what we got. I don't know, are you gonna give us something low alcohol, or where are you gonna go with this, Suze?
Well, I've gone for something completely alcohol-free. I had it over the weekend.
Yes.
It's bottle green, ginger and lemongrass cordial.
Oh, nice.
And I had it with soda water.
Sounds as though your throat could do with a little bit of easing there.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you very much indeed for that bottle green. They do very nice stuff. Okay, so let's see where today's confession takes us. This comes from Darren. Darren, thank you. There's a foreign accents required.
Foreign accent. Oh, excellent.
Dear.
Dear
Start the year in a
Simon
bang.
and the avalanche of asymmetric ablutions.
Yeah, that's us.
Ooh.
These events took place in Ukraine in the days of the Soviet Union. So this is probably the most ancient
Wow.
confession that we've had.
Yeah.
And involved neighbours of my wife's Auntie Antonia. She often recounted this sombre saga to her nieces. It all took place in the sunny region of Ukraine, where there is certainly a village. In this otherwise tranquil place, there were a couple who kept geese. This is the Sumy region of Ukraine, by the way, in case you're checking the map just to make sure you know where it is. We'll call this couple Pasha and Dasha. Like all good Ukrainian villagers, Pasha and Dasha spent most, this feels like a fairy tale.
It does a little.
Spent most of their time farming their land and preparing for the epic winter by stocking up the cellar plus any freezer with this year's abundant harvest. Unlike all, but definitely like some Ukrainian village folk, they also made their own vodka. By all accounts, not alcohol-free, but actually super strong stuff.
Yeah.
It was at least made sustainably, and the vodka mash was thrown onto the compost heap at the end of the process. No judgment there. However, this pastoral scene now takes a more disturbing turn. Pasha and Dasha had awoken early to collect some goose eggs for breakfast, only to find out that all the geese had died, suddenly and mysteriously, overnight. Auntie Antonia was hazy on the numbers here, but it was a lot of geese. And insert award-winning accent here, Simon. And for pointers, the accent from Sumy is quite similar to Belarusian. And therefore, according to Anuta, hilarious. So please, Simon, don't feel in any way restrained.
No, don't be restrained.
So Auntie Antonia was hazy on the numbers, but there were a lot of geese who were dead. And I quote, "There were many goose kaputska."
Hang on. I mean, come on.
Where were they from?
Swansea, by the sounds of
Belarusia.
it.
It's from Belarusia.
I thought it was Italy.
Saying the accent is similar to Belarusian doesn't really help very much.
Yeah.
That's all
No.
I'm saying. Anyway, the geese are dead. This was, of course, quite distressing. But in Soviet Ukraine, waste not, want not was, I'm almost sure, a motto. So the former goose owners quickly set about plucking the birds, ready for the freezer. However, as they couldn't fit all the geese, into the freezer just yet, and homemade vodka was surely beckoning, they left the deceased in the garden. Time passed,
Yes.
What?
but then all of a sudden, Pasha and Dasha were violently roused by unacceptably loud honking sounds. Rushing outside, they were utterly poleaxed, no offence to the Poles, by the sight that confronted their bleary eyes. Brazenly standing before them was an entire flock of definitely alive but naked, and more importantly now sober, geese. Yes, the vodka mash, thrown onto the compost heap earlier, hadn't had a moment to decompose before those feathered felons had recycled it in their own special way, and as a result ended up absolutely basted.
Oh my goodness.
The way geese do. Simon, I ask forgiveness not from Auntie Antonia, who is sadly no longer with us, or from her neighbours Pasha and Dasha, nor from the geese, who almost got themselves cooked with their little antics of getting themselves too drunk to find a pulse. Plus, feathers grow back again. Who knew about this? Obviously not me. It's a bit like when Jeff Goldblum said, "Life finds a way" in Jurassic Park.
Yeah, just like that.
Anyway,
Oh, yeah.
I do seek forgiveness from my wife, Anuta, who gave strict instructions not to give this story a broader audience, as she finds it slightly uncultured behaviour coming out of her homeland. Her opinion can be quite harsh at times, like when she refused to watch The Muppet Christmas Carol because the Muppets are just showing off pieces of cloth.
They are, aren't they? I hadn't thought of that.
I may have digressed.
Yeah.
Apologies.
I like that.
Yours dubiously, Darren in Ashford. The other one, he says. Okay, well, obviously the one somewhere in Ukraine. So we've never had a confession from Ukraine in the Soviet period at all. But anyway, very interesting. A little fairy tale, I think, with Pasha and Dasha. And it had a happy ending because the geese survived. They were just paralytic on the heavy vodka. What do you say, Sister Suze?
Well, Darren, I feel like they could have been a bit more responsible with where they put their vodka mash. And
Really? Where would you put it then?
Well, just somewhere not accessible to animals, if I had animals.
Right. You're going to be quite
in a
hardline
container?
about it? Okay. I mean, what a way to go, if you
Yeah.
will.
But they thought these geese were dead.
But they weren't, and they lived to fight another day, even though they were naked.
Probably.
That makes it okay, does it?
Yeah,
It does
well, I
not.
think
It's
so.
not forgiven.
Okay, Brother Matthew.
I mean, I'm going to forgive for a number of reasons. I mean, it's the first confession of the year,
Yes.
Of
so it would be
course.
churlish not to forgive. The other reason is the accents. Goodness me. That is-
gusta, kapuchka.
Yes,
Definitely
absolutely
Italian.
Belarus. Yes, definitely going to forgive for that. And they did the vodka mash. It was a graveyard smash. So for that reason,
It almost was.
I'm going to forgive.
Okay, so the people's verdict, please. Do you forgive Darren in Ashford for his Ukrainian Soviet Union geese mash-up, if you like? On the text, please, 61054, first word is Simon. Just before the news at 6 o'clock, we had tonight's confession, Goose Goose Duck, a tale from the Sumy region of Soviet Union Ukraine, and Pasha and Dasha, who kept geese, who somehow accessed the vodka mash. So therefore they were suspected to be dead, but actually they were just drunk.
No.
But they did get plucked for the freezer before they made a fantastic recovery, if spending a little while naked, which in the Ukrainian winter would not have been a lot of fun. There was also a reference to Jeff Goldblum for reasons that I can't quite remember, plus a fantastic accent, which was very, very close to Belarusian.
Very.
Anyway, the people's verdict is in. Here we
So
go.
Peter says, forgiven. The mental image of a flock of disgruntled naked geese will live with me for a long
Yes.
time. Jonathan says, absolutely hilarious. I have to forgive purely based on the incredible accent that Simon did.
Boom.
I love it. And Doina says, forgiven. I'm originally from a small village in eastern Romania, and much like Ukraine, everyone had a small distillery in their house and got geese drunk and featherless on the ratchy leftovers. Eastern European stories for you.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe there are many other Eastern European confessions.
I think so, says Doina.
Just waiting to be told. Well, Doina, you can lead the way. Send yours to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk.
Right, well.
Holly might know. She knows about music.
Yeah.
Ceylon is good.
It is.
I think it's better.
Okay, there you go. So
Yeah.
I've won.
Okay,
Excellent.
That's democracy for you.
There you go. Well, it is actually 2-1. That is the way it
Wrong
works.
decision. Anyway.
Today's confession comes from Andrew, which I believe is his real name, because it goes like this. Father Simon and the Confessional Collective. Ordinarily, Simon, you would change the names of all the players involved in a confession. On this occasion, I would like the main players' real names to be used. I think it is appropriate, and I'm sure my late mother would wholeheartedly agree,
Oh,
with a knowing smile.
okay.
My name is Andrew, and the confessional occurred on Boxing Day 1973. I was a 17-year-old, fast approaching 18. I lived at home in Waterlooville in Hampshire with my mum, Pat. I had an older brother and sister. Let's call them Bonnie and Clyde, or even Jekyll and Hyde. Either would be quite suitable if you ask me. So when we're using actual names, it
No,
doesn't extend
apart
to
from
brother and
that.
sister. We had the most fabulous neighbours living next to us, a wonderfully friendly Scottish couple called Ina and John, whom back in the day really loved their drink and really knew how to party.
They sound great.
John and Ina had 3 children, 1 lad and 2 seriously attractive young ladies, whom I fancied something rotten, but that's another story. Anyhow, since we had moved into the area a few years earlier, my mum would always invite John and Ina around for a drink or two on Boxing Day by way of a thank you for being so kind and supportive to all of us, because they were, and they still are in fact, the salt of the earth. So there we all were, 26 December 1973 in my mum's living room. My mum had laid on a small spread for us to enjoy. Slade playing in the background, lots of chatter and laughing. My mum sat John and Ina down in the comfy chairs with a plate of nibbles and poured them each a drink. My mum raised a glass to toast our lovely neighbours. John had a single malt whiskey, and the ladies and us kids had a small Harvey's Bristol cream sherry.
Okay.
That's disappointing, really.
It is a
But
little.
anyway. So John says, down in one. he
What?
says. Anyway, down in one it goes. And then up it comes again.
Oh,
a
whoa.
fine spray from his nostrils and mouth. John started coughing and spluttering uncontrollably, choking. His face seemed to turn a reddy purpley colour, the way they did in the 1970s. Ina was in a flash. She was up, slapping his back, and Mum then joined in, slapping his back as well. John started waving his arms about. Poor chap was unable to speak. I think he was trying to say, stop slapping me. But the more he waved his arms around, the more they started to slap him again. This was getting violent. Anyway, after what seemed an age, John got his breath back. With a croaky voice, uttered, water, several times. Water, water. See that? I did it 3 times.
Yeah, very good.
Mum
Yeah.
rushed off and returned, easier than the Ukrainian from yesterday.
I thought so.
My mum rushed off and returned with a glass of water. After swallowing half a glass, John's voice started to recover, and he said to my mum in a shaky, throaty voice, "There's something not right with the whiskey, Pat." So my mum picked up his glass and had a couple of sniffs of the contents, and then she cried out in a sort of surprised and anguished way, "Oh my word, also, good heavens above." That's the way we spoke in
Yes.
the 70s. She picked up half a bottle of whiskey and disappeared into the kitchen without a word. Returning a few minutes later with a fresh, rather larger glass of whiskey, my mum just simply said with a smile, "You'll enjoy this one, John," and offered no explanation. The incident was quickly forgotten, and we all had a jolly good time for the next couple of hours. And several hours later, after everyone had left, I asked my mum what the issue was with the whiskey. And she says, "It's far too embarrassing, Andrew. I won't be telling anyone, ever." And that just made me more intrigued, so I kept badgering and pestering my mother, and finally she relented and swore me to secrecy. And it transpired that my mum had kept this bottle of whiskey tucked away in a cupboard for special occasions, and mainly for our neighbour John. And some months earlier, my mum had noticed that the bottle was in a different position and seemed less full. Someone had been secretly helping themselves to it. So she marked the bottle a couple of times over the following weeks, and surprise, surprise, someone was having a quiet swig from time to time. So rather than confront her children, she decided she would teach the culprit a lesson and came up with a plan. Mum transferred the whiskey into an unmarked bottle and put the bottle at the bottom of the larder. She then refilled the whiskey with malt vinegar. Lovely on chips, not as a drink. Well, I was in stitches, and within a few minutes, my mum was crying with laughter as well. My dear mum had simply forgotten that she'd swapped the contents and had innocently handed John half a glass of vinegar, which he downed in one, and then brought up again. Mum swore me to secrecy, and the pilferer never owned up. We laughed again, thinking that my brother or sister, because it was them, had probably also had a mouthful of vinegar as well. That's karma, folks. My mum, Pat, sadly passed away 21 years ago, far too young, a very good human being, and I can picture her laughing uncontrollably. She will no doubt be listening in some faraway place. So I don't ask forgiveness for my mum for attempting to poison our neighbour John, and unusually I'm not going to ask forgiveness for Bonnie and Clyde, the suspected sneaky culprits. I'm with Susie and Holly, the unforgivers. I can't forgive the sneak, and Matt should join us too. And as a footnote, I still visit John and Ina from time to time, especially at Christmas. I called in on them just before Christmas, and we still had a giggle, but we only served, nice fade there,
Yeah, very good.
the finest quality whiskey. No vinegar was consumed. Sister Holly speaks for production everywhere.
Well, my opinion is that honesty is the best policy. And maybe she should have just confronted her kids about this. She saw that the whiskey was down from where it should have been, and she should have chatted to them about it. An honest and frank conversation, which could have been had and saved all the trouble that this caused. He choked away on the vinegar. I mean, it was absolutely disgusting, revolting, not a good experience for anyone involved. The poor guy, I feel very sorry for him, and that's why I'm not forgiving at all.
Very good. That's the way you were brought up, and that's the way everyone should be brought up. Brother Matthew.
Not me. I'm going to forgive. I'm with Pat on this one. Very much a fan of the retribution punishment of filling up the whiskey with malt vinegar, which does beg the question: what were they putting on the chips? Probably whiskey as well. Go around for chips all round at their house. Also, who downs whiskey down in one like John did? That's a ridiculous thing. You don't do that with single malt, John. If you know your whiskey, so really, it was his fault. So for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
Okay, so the people's verdict, please. Do you forgive Andrew and everyone else involved in this terrible, terrible tale of production of a whiskey aerosol spray via the nostrils? It's entirely down to you. The people's verdict, please. 61054. You can start the message with Simon. However, before the news, we had a confession from Andrew. It was our whiskey in a jar confession. It was a Boxing Day 1973 in Waterlooville in Hampshire. Round at the neighbours, everything was brown and beige because that's the way it was in 1973, including the drink, which John the neighbour thought was a fine malt whiskey but turned out to be malt vinegar with hilarious consequences. The people's verdict is in.
Forgiven, says Beth in Manchester. It ultimately ended innocently. I was concerned halfway through the story that it was poison, but vinegar seems fully forgivable. Wouldn't have got on. Kira says, forgiven, the classic parent switcheroo. As Mark says, one shouldn't down a single malt. I agree with Mark. Kyle from Stoke Goldington says, not forgiven. When I was 14, I worked on a fish and chip van for a couple of weeks in the summer. On the way back, I needed a drink. I was so thirsty. I recalled a history lesson where we were told that the Romans drank vinegar. I took a glug and promptly brought it all up out of the open window down the side of the van.
Very nice and a beautiful story, well told. Thanks, Mark.
Yes.
Okay, so confession time then. Please send your tale to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. The brand new podcast will be available on Friday. And we're just going to carry on without her, obviously. But if we were going to offer her a drink, I think the thing to have would be the King's Ginger. Which I was explaining.
Tell us more about the King's Ginger.
Well, it's basically, it's very alcoholic. And it's got ginger and it's sponsored by the King.
Okay.
That's all you need. And the King approves, basically.
Right.
That's what I'm suggesting. Anyway, today's confession comes from, and when you taste it, it feels like medicine. It's that good.
That sounds nice.
I got it very well to do that. Yeah.
Okay, so today's confession comes from Jackie. Father Simon and the Confessional Collective, back in the early 80s and in our early 20s, a group of us worked at the head office of a well-known frozen food company. Our colleague, Louise, recently returned from honeymoon, came in this particular Friday very angry that her new husband kept leaving the house unlocked when he left for work. She was worried their lovely wedding presents would be stolen. I suggested if Tim, for that is his name, thought his much prized Triumph Spitfire was at risk, he might attend to security more thoroughly. This idea developed into a bit of a thing, whereby we would pretend that his Spitfire had in fact been stolen, with the sole intention of frightening him into being more security conscious in future. To be convincing, we decided we'd need to pretend to be the police when we telephoned him at work to report the theft later that afternoon. Obviously, this is a very bad thing, which you should never do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Holly already, I think, disapproving. Julie, possibly not her real name, did a very good impersonation of a Scottish WPC at Richmond Police Station by adopting a fabulous Scots accent and employing the use of the word hen regularly. She telephoned Tim at work and told him that his car had been apprehended for speeding on the A3 and was discovered to be suspiciously loaded with a lot of household items crammed into the back, TVs, videos, hi-fi. On searching the car, they found paperwork, conveniently, which identified Tim as the owner and a letter showing Tim's workplace address and telephone number. He was told the driver had confessed to burglary and had been arrested and taken to Richmond Police Station, that his car was now impounded and he'd have to collect it as soon as possible because we needed to ensure that Tim wouldn't go home first and realise it was a bit of a prank. Tim was asked to... We don't approve of pranks, by the way. Tim was asked to attend Richmond Police Station as soon as possible to identify his possessions before his car and items could be returned to him, and he had to ensure he arrived by 4 p.m. Friday, otherwise he would incur storage charges. This seems very unlikely. Tim and a colleague left work immediately and headed to Richmond Police Station, where his friend dropped him off just as it started to pour with rain. Sadly, Tim was in his work clothes of jeans and a T-shirt. Who goes to work dressed like that? And he didn't have a coat, but but since he was collecting his car, it wouldn't matter. Oh well, never mind. Of course, nobody at Richmond Police Station knew anything at all about any theft of his vehicle, but did politely explain that WPC 007 was likely a clue that it had not been a genuine call from them. They didn't offer such a personalised service to reunite owners with their stolen goods after all. Did he know anybody who would play such an unpleasant prank on him? No, Tim didn't know. Who would do such a thing? He pondered all this on his way home in the rain. Tim set about trying to make his way home from Richmond, not an area he was familiar with, to the other side of Surrey by public transport, since he had no car to drive in. He couldn't get a taxi as traffic during Friday rush hour was a nightmare, and gridlocked, as anyone who lives in Richmond knows. By using public transport, he eventually got home at a ridiculously late hour, very wet and very, very cold. Meanwhile, back at home, Louise had prepared a nice dinner for when Tim returned, expecting them to have a laugh and a joke about it when the penny dropped. Yeah. But of course, dinner was now, in best sitcom tradition, ruined and burned. However, having first checked his beloved car was in the garage when he arrived home, gone 9 p.m, it was obvious that Tim had no idea who was behind the prank. Whilst Louise felt very guilty rather than come clean, she felt she had to go with the flow and instead acted accordingly by adopting the aggrieved wife stance. She pretended she was angry. She'd waited for him to eat dinner, which was now ruined. And on hearing his story of what happened to him, she said, "I don't believe you. You're having an affair."
What?
And you're having an affair to cover up. That's what's happening.
Yeah,
and I don't believe a word of your sorry tale.
No.
She played the part very well by going to bed early in apparently a foul mood. This last part particularly had us in stitches, Father Simon, when she told us this at work on Monday. We did ask if he ever suspected us, but she said he had absolutely no idea. Nor was she ever going to tell him. Ever. Well, until now.
Oh.
I beg forgiveness from all your good selves, but in particular Tim, who after a long week at work was sent on a wild goose chase and needlessly spent hours in rush hour traffic, cold and wet, getting home to an angry wife to be accused of having an affair. Forgiveness from Louise, who may or may not have been told Tim of her involvement today. To Richmond police staff and any other persons caught up in Tim's unnecessary journey, that's lots of love from Jackie, possibly not my real name. I suspect it's almost certainly not your real name. But it is Richmond Police who get the apology, but do they get forgiveness from Sister Holly?
Take a wild guess. Honestly, what a mess. What a mess this was. Firstly, impersonating a police officer. Never good. Absolute disaster. I hate pranks. Just all in all, never a good idea.
Yes.
He then wasted the actual Richmond police station's time because he turned up there. He then had to get public transport all the way in Surrey. I know the public transport in Surrey and it's not good. It's not good. Poor guy. He then got home. She then said he was having an affair. I mean, the whole thing was a mess. Was she not even very happy to be with him or something? And that was just a convenient excuse. Honestly, dreadful, not forgiving at all.
It's a torrid tale.
It really
the way you tell it. Anyway, Brother Matthew.
So I'm going to forgive. I think, obviously you were teaching him a lesson and it was all very, very contrived and probably went too far and therefore perfect in my opinion. But we come back to the central question, which is who goes out the house and leaves the house unlocked? Absolutely ridiculous behaviour, Tim. And frankly, you had what was coming.
Yes.
You in your Triumph Spitfire, you were locking them at night, weren't you? But you weren't locking the house when you were leaving. And I'm pretty confident that Tim never left the house unlocked again. So in a way, everyone learned a lesson, and for that reason,
and crime came down as a result.
So for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
Also, the police are quite right. WPC 007.
I mean, come on.
I mean, that's definitely a clue, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, it's the people's verdict. Please do you forgive Jackie, possibly not her real name. On the text, 61054. First word is Simon. For the news, our confession was about Tim, who wasn't having an affair, and his Spitfire, which wasn't stolen. Anyway, the people's verdict is here.
So Gemma says, forgiven. Unlike Holly, I love a prank well executed, and hopefully he did learn a lesson about leaving the door unlocked. Like Matt said, he had it coming. John in Macclesfield, though, says not forgiven. I was on the forgiven side at first. If you can't connect PC 007 to being a prank, then that's on you. However, accusing the man of having an affair, that's taking it too far. But Kathy in Featherstone says, as a proud Scot, not forgiven. No Scot would use hen when talking to a man.
Yes, a fair point. And also, you'll notice there was no dialogue there, which fortunately let me off the hook.
Wow.
If you have a confession, send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Nigel, all about that. Okay, last confession of the week. The new podcast arrives tomorrow. Today's confession comes from Nobby. Thanks, Nobby, for this tale, which is, it's like a PG certificate. Mildly distasteful.
Okay, well, that's pretty much all of them.
Yeah. Simon and the team, having spent 2 weeks on the binge with your podcast, listening to defendants pleading their cases for forgiveness, I am inspired to confess my own mischievous admission from December 2014 for your judgment. This involves 4 of my closest friends. We'll call them Little Lee, Big Bob, Righteous Richard, and Gobby Gary. It was my first time on a train heading out to the Birmingham German-themed Christmas market. That's the first time you've been to the market, or the first time on a train? Don't know. Anyway, It doesn't really matter. He's on the train.
Yeah.
And the train was packed tight. All the seats occupied, standing spaces filled with festive commuters. Righteous Richard was a regular train user for work purposes and led us through the hordes to a spacious standing space by this large semicircular pod at the front of a carriage. Like something from a science fiction movie, it was the fanciest lavatory stall I have ever seen, having 2 circular buttons with adjacent arrows flashing green. Pushing on an arrow with a hiss, the pod opened up slowly with a large door retreating into the wall, revealing the toilet. It pinged, having fully opened, and I stepped in. Pressing the same button within the lavatory, it hummed shut. And here's the key point. Inside the toilet, there was a third button, aside the arrows, with a padlock on. And I pressed it, and it locked the pod, with the buttons flashing red. And I'm sure you may know which direction this story is going in, but bear with me.
Okay.
Having utilised the toilet, I exited, and Righteous Richard led us through the bustling city, where we dined on bratwurst, steak sandwiches, Bavarian beer, and chocolate. Now, Gobby Gary, who we all adore, is, we have to say, hard work. I imagine the writer who created Jay from The Inbetweeners may have met our Gary.
Oh, right.
After many hours, we were all rather tired of him and ambled back onto the train, our bellies filled with beer and food. Again, the train was busy with us squeezing back to the spacious spot by the fancy lavatory pod. Having examined the pod, Gary pushed the arrow, it hissed open, and the door glided to a standstill. He stepped in, the door closed. More people piled into the train, with there now being a sizable audience for what was about to happen. Through some divine intervention, my attention was drawn to the flashing arrows on the lavatory, which were still green. I know they go red when that button with the padlock on is pressed. Therefore, this is open. Nudging my friends and pointing at the button, Little Lee nodded eagerly. Righteous Richard shook his head, scowling. Big Bob winked, giving me the thumbs up. We are a democracy after all, and the votes had been counted. Moving my finger toward the button, excitement coursed through my blood. My whole body trembled. Don't overact, Nobby. Only to be thwarted by Righteous Richard, who grasped my wrist, giving me a dangerous stare. I conceded, knowing the right thing to do was to protect my friend's dignity. We stood guard at the door with my companions mindlessly gazing out of the window. Feeling a tap on my shoulder, a polite mother with 2 small children in either hand whispered if I was in the queue for the toilet. Side-eyeing Righteous Richard as he was preoccupied, Little Lee and Big Bob were deep in conversation, and I said, "No, I am not," and I stepped aside. Exposing those green flashing buttons, the mum thanked me, inviting me, what I can reasonably assume is her child to press the button, which she obliged, removing her mitten. Hiss. The door slowly began to slide open. Realizing what was happening, Righteous Richard swung around, but it was too late. Like the grand prize being revealed on a 90s game show, the door unhurriedly opened. Unlike those 90s game shows, however, it wasn't a speedboat or an Austin Metro hidden behind the screen, but Gobby Gary. His face bright red, sat on the loo, wailing, "Close the door! Close the door!" Righteous Richard jumped into action, pounding at the button to close the door. Now, whether this was a design fault or a dodgy stall, it turns out you have to wait for the door to fully open before closing it.
Oh, no.
So silence spread across the carriage as the people turned to witness the palaver and peek from above their seats. The doors went very, very slowly, and then ping as they opened to their fullest. Though it was mere seconds, they passed like hours as a subdued Gary looked out at the carriage of commuters who all looked back. Some sniggered, some were disgusted, but all fixated on Gary. And then eventually, hiss, and the door began to creep shut, gradually concealing Gary before closing. Ping went the door. The carriage erupted into laughter, with this being one of our favourite tales to reflect on when talking about our youthful misdemeanours. He did, of course, get a round of applause. As he did.
No.
That's good.
I don't seek forgiveness from Gobby Gary or Righteous Richard, who was smoking for weeks after the incident and found it as funny as we did. I seek forgiveness from yourselves for the harm on the mother and the kids who may be living in shame due to the humiliation they unwittingly imposed on Gary. I rest my case and I await your judgment. Well, it's a very, very theatrical story, and I didn't know that the loo doors have to open fully before they're allowed to shut, that being a huge issue. Plus, lock the door. That's the major thing. See that thing with the padlock? Press the button. Sister Holly speaks first.
I feel really sorry for Gobby Gary. He was just minding his own business, and there's nothing worse than being caught out while on the lavatory, and he was really, really embarrassed in front of his friends and in front of a whole carriage full of people. And Nobby could have stopped it, and that's the bad part here. And so that's why I'm not forgiving at all. He could have said to the mother and the children, I'm so sorry, my friend is in there. It's occupied.
He chose not to.
But he chose not to.
I suspect we all know where Brother Matthew's going.
I'm going to go with the system on this one. The design
lavatory
of
system.
those loos, the cistern, yes. The loos with the buttons, the number of times I've been in those and you're just like, have I pressed the right buttons here? Is that definitely locked? Whereas it used to be you just lock the door with the bar and the door you knew was definitely locked, and now you've got to press all the buttons and you're not sure. And the round of applause at the end, so that made it all right, didn't it?
No, it
and
didn't.
it was his own fault, really, in a way. And
Well, it was his own fault. He just has to lock the door.
Yeah, lock the door, Gary. So for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
People's verdict, please, for Nobby.
Nobby, not Steve.
No.
Definitely not Steve.
I don't know where Steve
I don't know
came
where
from.
did that come from? Couldn't be anything.
Absolutely no idea at all. So anyway, let's talk about Nobby, and it's his confession. Do you forgive him, please? 61054. The first word is Simon. Just before the news, a confession from Nobby, and a tale on a crowded Birmingham train, a high-tech toilet, and Gobby Gary, who hadn't worked out how to operate the doors. Anyway, with hilarious consequences, here's the people's verdict.
So forgiven, says Lynn Thomas in Cambridge. This is the first time I've properly laughed out loud for ages. Excuse me, Jenny says forgiven. I agree with Matt. The design flaw in the door is no one's fault other than the train designer. It was unfortunate, but at least the carriage had a laugh. And Soph, somewhere in West Wales, says not forgiven. This happened to my friend. We'll call her Helen. There she was on the loose, smiling out at everyone in the carriage. So embarrassing for her, but she can laugh about it now. I don't think I can forgive, as if it was me, I would never travel on a train again.
Now, I think the drama in the tale was entirely about how slow the doors were.
Yes,
and
yes.
the fact that they have to open fully before they close again. But anyway, Nobby gets a smart speaker for sending in his confession. And we would like yours. Confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk.